Let's start with sort of what Eric was saying, that, okay, you're halfway around the world, but you're investing in the Nasdaq 100. How did you land on that index?
Well, look, Nasdaq 100 obviously doesn't need much introduction. It's one of the global headline indices, and interestingly, a fantastic complement for Australian investors to the exposure in the local economy. Australian economy is dominated by the financials industry and the resources, basically. So we have very long companies like BHP and Rio and other companies that are, global miners. But we don't have much by way of technology. We don't have by way of innovation. And Nasdaq 100 is actually a great complement. So it's become one of our most popular ETFs.
So interesting from that point of view. Talk a little bit about how demand for this product has evolved, especially over the past year with so much AI hype or excitement, depending on how you view it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, if I rewind all the way to the start of BetaShares, so our company has been operating now since 2010. So we launched our initial ETFs in December 2010, almost 14 years ago. In early days, of course, like everywhere, people were very uncertain and very unsure about ETFs, in particular ETFs that provide exposure to international, portfolios. But over time, Nasdaq 100 has actually become one of the key leaders, basically, in educating Australian investors about the benefits of a diversification and, of course, the benefits that ETFs can bring to the table. In more recent times, we have seen quite a significant acceleration, in demand. Again, Australian economy is a phenomenal economy. We have a great, of course, I'm a very proud Aussie. We have a great country, great economy. But the global innovation that NDQ, like Nasdaq 100 ETF, is providing cannot be found anywhere else.
And one thing we underrate here in the U.S. that I think you also have there, but other countries don't necessarily, is a population that doesn't assume its government is going to cover its retirement.
Yes.
And more fee-based advisors. How important are those for ETF growth?
That's a great question, Eric. So look, Australian superannuation system, which is our retirement savings system, is really the pride and joy of the country on the international scene. It's the fourth largest market globally, which many people are surprised to hear because our population is very small. Our population is only just over 25 million people, yet we have the fourth largest retirement savings pool in the world. The reason for that is because many decades ago, our government has introduced a compulsory superannuation regime, which essentially says 11%, or actually going to 11.5% of your salary has to be contributed on a compulsory basis to a retirement savings plan. And that's, of course, together with the magic of compounding, it's what created this phenomenal industry. And quite rightly, you also pointed out that just over a decade ago, we had a significant change in laws in Australia where advisors were no longer allowed to charge commission or charge any sort of fee which is conflicted with the interest of clients. And that's really provided significant fuel for growth of the ETF industry. So to give you a sense, since 2001, which is when some of our first ETFs started launching in Australia, our industry has achieved a compound growth rate of over 43% per annum.
Right.
And to give you a sense, it's already starting to look like a mature, serious industry, yet ETFs represent only 4% of the managed funds industry in Australia. And last year alone, we've seen 34% growth in assets under management in ETFs in Australia.
Well, we have just over a minute left with you, and I want to talk a little bit about the growth of the Australian ETF industry and who's on top, because Vanguard, as I understand it, is the market leader. BetaShares and BlackRock are about neck and neck, as I understand it. How do you become number one when you're fighting against such giants, such as BlackRock, such as Vanguard?
Yeah, well, look, we obviously love competition, and it's fantastic for us to have such strong competitors and motivating competitors to try to beat as Vanguard and BlackRock. But the truth of the matter is our focus is very much on growing the pie, first and foremost. I mean, as I mentioned, only 4% of our managed funds industry is represented by ETFs, so there's a lot more upside to grow. BetaShares in the last 12 months has been number one in terms of market share of growth, and in fact, over the last 7 years or so, we've been either number one or number two in terms of market share of growth. How do we compete? Look, we have an advantage of being local and being focused. Of course, we don't have a global brand and a global footprint like some of those other players, but we try to play to our advantages and play to our strengths.